And I think that's the thing with Booker. I don't want to draft just a guard. I'm drafting Tyler Booker, who plays guard, which to me is a little different because I know that some of the things that he's bringing to the party are a little different than other people they've drafted. Xavier Su'a-Filo, Kenyon Green. I know people have PTSD from the Texans drafting a guard high in a draft. Like I completely get it. And I know Booker is not the perfect prospect, but you guys have talked about it on your shows often. This offensive line lacked, you name it.
Yeah.
They didn't lack talent. They lacked cohesion. They lacked toughness at times. They lacked swarm, for whatever that means. They lacked all those things. They have to put people in that room that think like Tyler Booker does, who thinks like Will Anderson does. And it's not just Alabama guys that think that way. I think Gray Zabel is like that. I could see that at the Senior Bowl. You can see it in the way he plays. Like he's got that too. So to me, I'm drafting Tyler Booker. I'm not just drafting a guard who is Tyler Booker, if that makes sense.
I know. And it is a little PTSD, and it is kind
of.
It
is. I have it too. Yeah. I mean, I have it too. I thought Su'a-Filo was going to be, and I've gotten the story behind the scenes on that Su'a-Filo pick, and it's maddening, but whatever. So I chuckle at it.
Do share.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it was. Anyways, there are a lot of people that wanted to kind of push the blame onto others about that Su'a-Filo pick over the years. So, anyways, I'll just leave it at that.
It's not my job.
I was excited about Su'a-Filo, and then I got to meet Xavier, and I mean the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. But I've met many of those guys. You guys know one, Nico Collins. Like when you meet and talk to Nico, he's the nicest, sweetest dude. And then he goes on the field, and it's like he becomes Mr. Collins, and that's the kind of guy I want to have. Kamari Lassiter is the same way. Like Kamari off the field, laughs, giggles, good, just fun dude to be around, jokes about stuff. I mean, just cool one-liners. And you get him on the field, and I remember Sting saying, "Hey, he crazy." Like, yeah, he is. I want that. That's kind of what I see with Booker. I see it with Zabel. I see it with Donovan Jackson to a degree. I like Donovan Jackson as well. I have him a little bit lower than the other two. So it's, to me, I'm drafting Tyler Booker as opposed to I'm drafting a guard who is Tyler Booker, if that makes sense.
Makes sense. Now, Johnny, I know the Texans, I mean, last year's a great example. Kamari Lassiter is not a workout warrior. But Kamari Lassiter, he worked out better than some of the workout stuff that Tyler Booker's put together.
Sure.
Like athletic profile with some of the, I know it's not all football activities, but Booker's one of the, seemingly least athletic guys at the guard position in this upcoming draft amongst the highly rated guys. Is there any worry with that? I get the mentality. I understand, football in a phone booth, he's going to win. But like, is there any worry with the athleticism?
Yeah. It's like talking about, hey, what's the problem with your daughter? Oh man, you don't want to go into it. You don't want to talk about it. Your loved ones, but there is a concern. There definitely is, and I think, like I'm about to say, I think people that are more realistic about what their kids can and can't do keep you out of the Nico Iamaleava situations. That's it. That's a different story for a different time. I think Booker's lack of athleticism. After I knew he wasn't going to test well. I knew that. But I thought he'd test a little bit better. And then I've always kind of been, I like the testing because I do think it gives you kind of a baseline. But I'm like, does it show up on the field? And I think it does a little bit. One of the things that you kind of can see is like when he's moving like a zone game, he's trying to get up to the second level. He can get there, but he has to strain so much to get there. A lot of times he's not in control. He can't then, get a handle on a linebacker. And look, there are a lot of guards that do that. But for a guy that you would think is the best guard in this draft, you think he'd be a little bit better at that. Ironically, the one thing that he does pretty well, which I was a little bit surprised, when he pulls, like when they're running counter, he's got the kick out block. I've seen him numerous times come across, and there's some 245-pound outside linebacker that's going to, oh boy, I got to take this block on. nope, you know what? I'm going to skate upfield and try and go around him that way. Booker does a nice job of actually changing his course and getting a piece to kind of kick that guy out and letting the running backs cut up inside. So I think there's a little bit of that lack of athleticism in how, he can latch and stay latched to a block. Sometimes he gets bumped off a block because his feet aren't quite right. Most of the guys end up being a little bit better athlete. Like, I think Gray is a little bit better in doing that. You can see, like, Gray's feet, man, they're so good because he just runs those feet through a guy, and that'll eventually get him square with a guy where he can then, with his strength, hold up. Booker will get there, and his strength up, his upper body strength a lot of times against college guys, he can kind of torque them and move them, and his feet aren't right. If his feet aren't right going against Dexter Lawrence, he's screwed. His feet aren't right and underneath him as he's going against Jeffrey Simmons. Simmons will throw him into the stands. And so that can be part of his game that you go, ooh, okay, I'd like to see this a little bit better. But what he does so well, and his strength in the run game in particular, and the fact that he can pull and be effective when he pulls, I think some of the other things can kind of come along that they can coach him, maybe cut a little bit of weight, and then coach him to be a little bit better in that regard. And look, I don't know, other than Quentin Nelson, Zach Martin. Zach Martin had to learn how to do all that at guard. He was a tackle at Notre Dame that had transitioned into guard, and he learned how to do it. So I think Tyler will have some issues, but I learned this long ago that if a guy is as good as Booker is, and he wants to be great, truly, really wants to be great, and he's going to do the things to be great and stays healthy, at worst, he's just going to be an average starter that you can live with for the next how many ever years. Now, if he's a first rounder, he's a first rounder, he should be doing these things. Look, Kareem Jackson never made a Pro Bowl, but were we happy with Kareem Jackson? Yeah, for the most part.
Eventually.
Yeah, eventually. No, he never played that. He should have played his proper position, which is safety, but that's a different story for a different day.
That's a little too long.
Yeah. But the fact is, that lack of athleticism does show up a little bit, Cody, in his feet, and getting his feet under him, and being a little better in that regard. But I find him fascinating because he's got the measurements of a tackle. He's got 34.5-inch arms. He's got 11-inch hands, and his wingspan's like 84 inches. So he can reach a guy that a lot of short-arm guards can't get to. And when he gets his hands on somebody, it's done. And I can't say that we've had a guard like that. We wanted Kenya Green to be that guy. It just didn't work out. Xavier Su'a-Filo was never that guy. He was all over the map. His technique was everywhere all at once, and it wasn't great. I think Tyler's been coached pretty well at Alabama. You can see, his hands are pretty good. His hand placement's pretty good. He's pretty smart with stunts and twists, things that we couldn't pick up to save our lives last year. And then he's going to be that voice in the locker room, hopefully, in due time. Maybe not as a rookie, but soon enough.